My guests are seated, and I'll introduce them right away. From my left extreme is the Honorable James Agalga, MP, Bulso North, and Ranking Member, Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament. Okay, so the man who chairs that committee that he belongs is here in the house this morning. The MP for Mpraeso, and he's a chairman of the Parliament Select Committee on Defense and Interior, Seth Kwame Echampong. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming to the studio. Also here in the studio is Inusa Fuseni to continue where he left off and perhaps recanvass his points. He has come in a way I can tell he is so prepared. And James, equally, I say same of him, because when they come with the loads of documents, sometimes it is because they are not ready. But when they have been able to compress the documents into only one, or just their tablet, you can tell that there is a reason for it. So Inusa Fuseni, the Honorable MP, Tamale Central, and Ranking Member, Legal, Constitutional, and Parliamentary Affairs. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you.
Good morning. And Abdul Malik Kwekobako, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, and our regular panelist, once again, here to take us down history. If, you know, that is the caveat, if he is dead. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us in the studio. So, it's been a week that the Ghana First demonstrators, the inter-party, committee or coalition of they call themselves for the sovereignty of Ghana, have also been at work criticizing left, right, and center the US-Ghana military deal. So they got the president agitated. I'm sure everyone agrees with that. And the president himself said it, that he was infuriated about some of these things. So he has told them in very plain language to just shut up and stop their reckless, those are the words of the president, hypocritical and unpatriotic conduct. Let's see how we exhaust this discussion this morning. First, let's take a listen to the president, portions of what he had to say by national broadcast.
It is clear to me that if the people of Ghana knew the conditions under which foreign embassies and our friendly international institutions operate in Ghana, nobody would have been surprised that a defense cooperation agreement would make such provisions. Such knowledge would have spared many citizens the genuine anxiety and concern they have felt about the agreement. It is my firm belief that the case for openness and transparency in our governance has been clearly demonstrated, and the argument conclusively settled by these events. But we have to take issue with the frontline politicians who have sought to mislead the people in this blatant manner, and those who, for mischievous purposes, leaked the document destined for the scrutiny of Parliament prematurely to a section of the media, who then went on to describe it as a secret document. How could a document intended for the consideration of Parliament be described as a secret document? How could anyone who has been in government and run the administration of this nation feign ignorance of the conditions under which Ghanaian troops undertake peacekeeping operations, or the conditions under which our country has collaborated with major international institutions? It is difficult to understand that such people, knowing what they do know, would go about so blatantly to confuse people and go so far as calling for the overthrow of our democracy. A democracy that has become the beacon of good governance in Africa, a democracy that has survived for a quarter of a century and encompassed even the most irresponsible episodes of ill governance in a state of unity and stability, a democracy that has provided the framework for systematic developments in our social and economic welfare, and assured us of the longest uninterrupted period of stable constitutional governance in our history? Surely, this is the kind of cynical manipulation by reckless self-seekers, which in the fullness of time, the people of Ghana will acknowledge and condemn. And I'm sure that as the facts become clear and widely available, and as the people come to terms with the evidence, they will reject the falsehood and deliberate attempts to destabilize our peaceful country. Truth is sacrosanct.
Yusuf Saini.
Yes.
Cynical manipulation by reckless self-seekers. And you guys will be exposed in due course if you have already not been exposed. That's what's going on, isn't it?
Strong words by His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana.
With his address in this first segment. You do about 5 minutes each. And please, when I say stop, you stop so that we can preserve time. And then you don't come to complain we don't have time any further.
Okay.
Then we can deal with the documents themselves one more time and for the very final time on the show.
Very well. I think those were very strong words by the President. I was hugely disappointed when I heard those words. The President, in dealing with the issue, raised basically on the basis of national interest. And let me restate. The only reason why we are engaged in this discussion is to ascertain with a degree of certainty whether the U.S.-Ghana military cooperation agreement secures our national interests. That is the only reason why we are engaged in it. And what the opportunity given to the President, or the opportunity the President elected to take, was to use the tools of rational persuasion to convince all of us and assure us that at all material times that he and his group, his government, engaged the United States government in negotiating the provisions of this agreement, they had the supreme national interest at stake and in view. And so I think that what the President did not secure that reassurance by the people of this country. Secondly, I think the President was very condescending. He also was very patronizing of Ghanaians. I mean, he employed fallacies of secular reasoning, but most prominent. He said, the U.S. never made a request for a base with the government of the Republic of Ghana. I'm paraphrasing. And even if they had, we as a country would not have considered it. The answer that the President and this government have always been called upon to answer is what is the nature and form of the agreement that has been entered into with the United States by this government of Ghana. That is simply what His Excellency the President has been called upon to answer. And he failed, refused, or neglected to address his mind to this very, very important question.
The most important assurance that Ghanaians were seeking, those who needed to be assured, was that there is not a military base, or there will not be one. And the President emphasized that point in giving the assurance.
Yes.
So what are you talking about?
This is the second part. So when we come to the second part, what has informed people to come to the conclusion that this agreement probably, even though unintended, will have the consequences of establishing a military base in Ghana? I mean, we'll come to that in the second part. The President did not answer that. He just made an affirmation that this is, and people can be honest all the time. Okay? And probably that is his honest view. But you can also talk about politicians, that at least sometimes they can be a little dishonest with the people of this country. But I don't believe that the president was dishonest with the people of this country. I just think that he had the honest view that this agreement would not establish a military base, and that was not made to him. You see, his speech was also very idiosyncratic and tendentious. Why? What fallacy or what thinking informed the president that all those who were raising issue were necessarily of the opposition party? Not even in the opposition party as a whole. What informed the president? I have known people who are sympathetic to this government, NPP, who have raised issue.
The Ghana First demonstration is led by the NDC.
Well, that is a demonstration. I'm saying as a matter of fact that are no people in the MPP who have issues with this agreement. Now, the president was given a national platform to address the people of Ghana. Unfortunately, he got carried away by his political considerations and probably thought for a brief moment that he was on a political campaign platform. He was not. The national anthem was played. And clearly, that gave him an opportunity to talk to us as a people.
You said he got carried away. He was reading a speech. Well, written speech was prepared.
The emotions of those
well thought of.
The emotions of those who wrote the speech for him, or his emotions when he was writing the speech, because I've known presidents who have written their own speeches. Obama wrote his own speeches. Abraham Lincoln wrote his own speeches. So if he was writing the speech himself, the emotions that came up and found expression in the speech manifested itself when he was delivering the speech. If the people other people wrote the speech for him, there was some telepathic transfer of the emotions that were in the people to the president. And so he got carried away.
I see.
Okay?
I see.
But if not, how can you say that anybody who raises issue about this agreement is a reckless self-seeker?
Anybody or persons like yourself
No, it's not like
who
myself.
are fully aware or ought to be aware of the terms of this deal, which is not any different materially from previous ones, should not be doing what you're doing, because you are misleading the public and whipping up anti-American sentiments when you yourselves secretly enjoy American, largesse.
Look, when we argue or seek to argue on the agreement, we are just making statements on a series of propositions to establish a fact that this agreement is not in the interest of the country. That is different. And I do that in exercise of my fundamental right to freedom of speech. Okay? I don't do that because I'm NDC or a political being. I do that in exercise. And the Constitution says that clearly.
All right.
And we are not in a dictatorship.
All right.
Now,
he sounded like a dictator?
he sounded more like a dictator. He not willing to countenance opposing views. I have never known Nana. That's why I was shocked. I was surprised. I've never known my president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, to be intolerant of opposing views.
Okay. Kweku, this is what President Jerry John Rawlings writes, that though the president's address was hard, it was important and timely to hear him and the American ambassador earlier affirm that there would be no military base established in Ghana. That was my major concern in my initial reaction to news of the agreement. The spirit of cooperation, be it military or diplomatic, has always been there. If there are details of the agreement that warrant a second look, such details should be examined to create comfort for all sides.
Well, that's what former President Rawlings, I prefer to proceed in that manner, should have done earlier. He didn't take his time to examine issues, and then he went to town. And I criticized him for that. Just like General Nunu Mensah. These are people who have been in state security, state authority before, in charge of this country. What Mr. Rawlings has just said, that's what he should have said earlier, or checked. He has access to the state and to institutions of states, including the presidency, that he could have actually sought to verify those things. But he added his voice to it in that negative way, and it didn't help matters. General Nunu Mensah is still doing the same thing. Well, I'm sure when we come to the specifics, we'll show.
So for the record, General Nunu Mensah, even after the president has spoken, insists that the president has been misinformed.
Yes, and he's saying all sorts of things.
Okay, so
and
go
this
ahead.
is a man who was a national security advisor. He was a chief of defense staff. He's so proud to tell people that the only two-time chief of defense staff. Of course, people haven't asked the circumstances that led to that two-time, but I think that would be unfair for me to interrogate at this stage. You have asked us to deal with the president's speech.
Yes, he was unpresidential. He was angry. All of that. Emotional.
Well. You see, and there are about 4 areas where I'm sure you would put in context what you've just said. I see this place. How else would we have exposed the unspeakable hypocrisy of the fraternity of some frontline politicians who make a habit of running with the hares and hunting with the hunts, who secretly wallow in the largesse of the United States of America, whilst at the same time promote anti-American sentiments to a populist constituency. I see nothing unpresidential about this statement, and there are many, about 3 or 4 more. I'm not sure if you give me time.
So what was that point? Wasn't that a low blow? They are talking about a national issue. You're talking about their private, enjoyment of largesse of the U.S.
The focus from fraternity of frontline politicians. Please, that's where the focus is. Now, when you have a fraternity of frontline politicians out there telling you that this 2018 agreement will create room for introduction of nuclear bombs into this country, the introduction of chemical and biological weapons into this country, the introduction of homosexuality into this country. If you have these people who are experienced, who have been in government, who have signed similar agreements, out there pushing that line and telling the world that, look here, there are secret tunnels from the U.S. Embassy to Kotoka International Airport, and that is how they will bring them in here. There is a military base by all means. You have the minorities' first statement they issued. I have a copy here. That's the parliamentary wing of the Pact NDC party. Then you have the NDC party's own subsequent press conference statement here. And these are frontline politicians who have been in government before, talking of how outrageous and unprecedented tax exemptions that were in 2018 are. They are talking of the fact that people will come in with their ID cards. These are people who are expected to know, because they have been part of it. And they are out there playing on the keyboards of people's emotions and driving people out there. And I've said, my focus has always been on those who have been in government before and who signed similar agreements. Not the same. Similar agreements I keep on emphasizing. Okay? Who are they? Hypocrites of the highest order. Hypocrites of the highest order. Adequate, immediate response to them. I hear them go mentioning some names like Professor Akilakpa Sawyer, some lecturers and things. Are they part of the fraternity of frontline politicians? Let's focus. You read the statements they issued, you think they descended from Mars, and that this 2018 agreement was completely new in our politics and diplomacy. So the president was damn right to have described them as such. See, the second one, but we have to take issue with the frontline politicians, I'm quoting the president, who have sought to mislead the people in this blatant manner, and those who for mischievous purposes leaked the document destined for the scrutiny of Parliament prematurely to a section of the media, who then went on to describe it as a secret document. You know my stand. Here, the emphasis for me is the frontline politicians misleading, and I've given you account. Leakage of documents, I'll be the last person to be worried about it.
What contradiction is that? If he, the president, is touting that he's the first to bring this to Parliament for scrutiny because he believes in the democracy, and then he's at the same time talking about the document having been leaked for the public.
No, there's no contradiction. It was talk classification. They have different levels at when they become public. I'm talking as a journalist. I was making the point as a journalist. I don't really care. Look, the truth is that thing, it got to Parliament. People have been saying, no, it was when it was leaked. There are members of it got to Parliament 14th of March. It wasn't laid then. It was laid, I think, subsequently, and I'm sure the chairman will tell you. I have the document here as to when it was laid.
Well, by the JoyNews account, they had a copy before it went to Parliament.
No, but I'm not contesting that.
Right.
I don't see why I should even contest that.
Okay.
I am saying that what I know is that 14th March, that was before Joy's news anyway. That was before Joy's breaking news. About a week or 10 days more, if we examine the documents. But it was laid, I think, a Tuesday, and Joy came out on a Monday. But if you know the real facts, the tragedy, the movement of the correspondence from Cabinet, Defense Ministry, and to Parliament, it was 14th March. Long before Joy FM came out. So it was already in Parliament. Once it gets to Parliament, that classification changes. Here, I don't have much problem.
Like Yunus says, if the president elects to do a nationwide broadcast to explain issues, should he not be focusing on the facts and to demystify as he sought to do?
But he did.
As he should have done.
But he did.
Rather than what he has, because the majority of opinions so far, as assessed by the media, is that he failed in that job woefully.
I don't know where the survey was done and by who and how they went about the survey. I don't
Ghana
know.
Connect did the survey yesterday.
Yeah, but
no
Ghana
matter
Connect,
how unscientific.
No, yes, thank you.
The majority is that the president failed.
You have answered the question, no matter how unscientific it is. And I respect Ghana Connect. In fact, this station is one of my favorites. I don't joke with multimedia organs in terms of your broadcast, so I take it serious. But it is not a substitute for a scientific survey. And that's why I say you answered it. Now, third one. Surely, this is the kind of cynical manipulation by reckless self-seekers who in the fullest of time the people of Ghana will acknowledge and condemn. And I'm sure as the facts become clear and widely available, and as the people come to terms with the evidence, they will reject the falsehood and deliberate attempts to destabilize our peaceful country. Truth is sacrosanct. And who says this is an insult? I've told you, the minority, their first statement, the things they said, I don't know if they still stand by them. The party, the things they said, and then on this show, some of their own spokespersons, and the things they said, okay, they were reckless.
And the president was going on demonstrations. Was he intending to destabilize the country? So why does he call this a attempt to destabilize the country?
No, you know something, I suspect. I had nothing to do with the statement, but I suspect. I'm reading into it.
That caveat we will accept.
Let's hear what your suspicion is. You suspect what? Let's hear the suspicion.
Honor if I had been invited to deal with this.
So what's your suspicion? Go ahead.
I suspect the president is alluding to Kuku Anyodo hosting, which you know I don't take serious. But I suspect that that's where the linkage is coming from. Because the man said January 13, 1972, your father and Busia were thrown out, and that civilian coup d'etat. I suspect that's what the president is saying.
Okay.
In there. I don't put much premium on Kuku Anyodo hosting, but the emphasis here is about the cynical manipulation by reckless self-seekers. That I agree. If you know, look, my brother, let's be honest. I expect people who have been in government before and have signed similar things to know. You are talking of status of forces agreement, okay? and to assume that that is the route for a military base. I mean, please, you are seeking to cynically manipulate people on basis of their emotions.
I see. Okay. James, you are one of these frontline politicians. You are not a mere member of the Defense Committee in Parliament. You have continued to insist, and you are going to do that again today, that there is basis for a military base, contrary to what the assurances the U.S. have written to the Defense Ministry to explain, and the President's reaffirmation of same. So why should anybody fault the President in getting angry at the manner in which you are going about all of this?
Samson, thank you very much. First of all, let me state that I share in the view of the ranking member for Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Honorable Inusa, when he says that the President's address on the U.S.-Ghana military pact was condescending. But beyond that, I would even go further to state that that particular address was also undemocratic. It was undemocratic in the sense that in a democracy, a multi-party democracy, one of the factors that constrains executive authority vested in a president, and you know the executive powers of the president under the 92 Constitution are enormous. You need a vibrant opposition. You need dissenting voices to constrain the exercise of the enormous power vested in him. Without such dissent, you cannot talk about a multi-party democracy. That is why the framers of the Constitution found it expedient to capture in Article 21 the following words, and let me read for the benefit of our listeners. General fundamental freedoms, 21 clause 1. All persons shall have the right to a freedom of speech and expression, which shall include freedom of the press and other media. Listen, Samson, President Akufo-Addo talks about defamation, and that statements made by those who are opposed to the 2018 Ghana-US military pact have defamed him. And yet he was one of the leading political figures in this country who fought hard to have the criminal libel law abolished, so that you and I can freely express our views without fear of being incarcerated. But something that is not even the issue. I just wanted to establish the basis that whatever the opposition and those well-meaning Ghanaians did by raising their voices in a courageous manner in criticism of the US-Ghana Military Pact 2018 agreement, did that in consonance with their constitutionally guaranteed rights. And so any attempt to create the impression that those Ghanaians and members of the opposition who raised their voices in that manner are nation wreckers, self-seekers, hypocrites, is unacceptable in a democratic dispensation. And so I thought that the president, as somebody who rode on the back of the constitutionally guaranteed rights to free expression, and in fact represented quite a number of people in our law courts to vindicate those rights, will now be the one to spew out these words. I thought that it was most unfortunate.
Article 21 1A.
Absolutely.
You have not gone beyond that. You have not read the qualifying clause that you find that requires the speech to be responsible and to be within the bounds of law.
Of course, all rights come with attendant, limitations. So yes, the freedom to speak, etc., express oneself
It's not an absolute right. But I'm saying that within the context of all the debate that has so far ensued relative to the enhanced defense cooperation between the US and Ghana, nobody has stepped out of bounds. Why? Ghanaians have read an agreement which was brought before Parliament and ratified in circumstances that well-meaning Ghanaians and individuals thought was even unconstitutional to start with. And a lawyer of high repute, the president, would say what? Those who raise those issues about the unconstitutional character of the agreement are self-seekers, nation wreckers. Samson, let me respond quickly to a direct accusation. I know Masida Kwekubako naturally was referring to me because I sat in this studio, I think last 2 weeks.
It was an innuendo.
And made the point.
That's why we believe that.
I made the point
You had a distance.
in very clear terms that the 2018 agreement has terminology which has not been defined, and that by implication, if this agreement is allowed to stand, the US government could even import into this country nuclear weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons. You know what? I did not indulge in scaremongering, and I still stand by that position. That is the irresistible
Even after
conclusion.
I referred you to the international rules, the international rules on how nuclear weapons are supposed to be dealt with.
Yes. Those rules have been in existence from day one. Countries that have been signatories recently were guided by experience, have used them. Look at what is happening in Syria. So we are guided by facts and not emotion. But Samson, let me refer you, because they have oftentimes made specific reference.
We'll get to this document.
No,
we'll
I want to cite it in response, direct response to Kweku's criticism of positions taken. You would see something. You would see that notwithstanding the existence of international conventions, etc., the 2015 agreement expressly excluded the transfer of certain categories of weapons and equipment.
Which article are you referring to?
I'm referring to Article 3.
Or the 2015?
Yes, of the 2015 agreement, Article 3, yes. No, let's go to 5.
Article 5?
Yes.
Okay.
Also excluded from transfer by either party under this agreement are any items the transfer of which is prohibited by its national laws or regulations, full stop, in accordance with U.S. law and regulations. The United States, yes, may not transfer the following items.
That's the key area.
Under this agreement: guided missiles, naval mines and torpedoes, nuclear ammunition, including such items such as warheads, warhead sections, projectiles, demolition munitions, and training ammunition. Then it goes on: guidance kits for bombs or other ammunition. E, chemical munitions or ammunition which do not include riot control agents. And it goes on and on and on. Samson, why was it important to state this position in the 2015 agreement?
Because of the
for purposes of specificity.
The nature, exactly, of the 2015 agreement.
What was the nature?
And cross-servicing agreement dealing with logistics, supplies, and transfers. That is the nature of that thing you are holding.
I thought arguments had been made that this particular agreement, 1998, formed the basis for the 2018 agreement. If so, why have we omitted all this important article which specifically restates the position of American law? Remember that that is American law. Agreement. So they would pursue their national interest. How do we insulate ourselves from those violations without an express statement of that position in the agreement?
Okay, thank you.
As lawyers, you know,
hold it there.
The principle of specificity. You cannot run away from it.
Hold it there.
So
now let's come to the chairman of the Defense and Interior Committee. You had the president in very clear terms. Now there are suggestions that in the first place there are two individual citizens who are in the Supreme Court challenging the processes that have been gone through in Parliament on this matter. And the President, on the basis of that, ought to have refrained from even electing to do a nationwide broadcast on a matter that is sub judice, so to speak, before a court of law, the Supreme Court, to pronounce on. Do you also find that that may have been the reason he didn't get into the finer details, particularly regarding the propriety or otherwise of the ratification, because that's the subject before the court?
Thank you very much, Samson.
That makes sense to me.
Samson, before me, as I speak with you, is a communication between the legislative arm of government and the executive arm of government. And as we said, you would realize that I am in government with the president because I belong to the same political tradition. But I operate from, per the principle of separation of powers, I operate from the arm of the legislature. I speak as a rep of the legislature. The legislature, insofar as I understand, the Parliament of Ghana has ratified the agreement and it has done its constitutional duty and it is gone.
Well, we may get there because they insist that you have ratified a draft agreement and not the agreement, an unexecuted agreement.
But good counsels like yourselves understand that it doesn't lie in my mouth to interpret this Bill of Rights of Ghana. It is the duty of the superior courts of Ghana. I don't want to get in there. The matter is before them. Let's deal with what is before us. And I want to say to Ghana that I am very much calm because His Excellency the President addressed the nation as the Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. And he did so, and I really say I admired him in his posture because this is a matter that borders on the defense of the Republic of Ghana. And the way and manner this conversation emerged and how it had traveled, we needed to safeguard our defense. And for me, he spoke forcefully to ensure that morale was up in the service. I say this because many a times, most of us who do not associate with these people, when matters happen this way, it gives them a different orientation. And I'm happy the president did this to save this day and salvage the situation.
The president boosted the morale of the armed forces. That's what you're saying.
Because he stood on his ground
as the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces.
So.
Morale had gone down.
Exactly, because what was happening, they felt we were over-politicizing an established international relational policy. It's a relationship we've had with the U.S. over decades. It is nothing new. You said we want to go into the meat of the subject. We realized that whatever we had done was consistent with our relationship with the United States. And so there is nothing untoward. That's why when the president says hypocrisy, for me hypocrisy is nothing but a behavior. And he was just trying to categorize some Ghanaians, not all Ghanaians. And it is not all Ghanaians who necessarily may be National Democratic Congress members.
Definitely
yes,
not.
Very well. So that is why.
Otherwise, they would have won elections. Exactly. And they will win elections forever.
No. That is why I'm not so much perturbed. My concern is that he might say cynical. Cynical is equally a behavior, and so it is not so much worrisome. But for me, how were we going to get our defense forces back on their feet? And that was what he demonstrated for me. And I was very, very glad he did so. And let me tell you, when the president says there's
I needed a bit of explanation about the morale of the armed forces that had gone down. What is it in this deal that they felt they were going to lose as a result of the public commentary and criticism?
Thank you very much. The entirety of this whole conversation centers on the military. None. I'm not party to what is going to happen. If you go into the agreement, this agreement was interfaced by military officers, lawyers of the United States Department of Defense, and lawyers of the Ghana Armed Forces. And after they had done their initial work, then they brought in, by regulation and our rules, they brought in the Attorney General's
My question is that when I read it, I don't find any clause or article that says that you will get this much or that much. I've only heard a U.S. ambassador to Ghana say that there is somewhat $20 million, and that's good enough, you know, for us. I don't read anywhere
Sometimes I want to go too far. I just want to say,
A or B.
for your
worry?
elucidation, you believe that we in Parliament enact acts of Parliament. Subsequent to that, we do regulations in support of the acts to give meaning to what we have done as an enactment, as an act.
Right.
Simplicity. In that articles, in that agreement, Article 17 describes whatever is supposed to be done subsequent. That is what you want to know. And that is why we don't need to cry over spilt milk. This is not new to the military officers of Ghana.
Okay.
This is what they have been doing over the years. And that is why in international relations, that's what the president said, that when it comes to our international relations, it is above, he says, he said, indeed, the United States of America has not made any request for such consideration. That was when he was talking about a military base. However, in consideration, when he said such consideration and consistent with our established foreign policy, we will not consider any such request. Over the period, we have engaged with them, and this is the way we've engaged with them. So I'm surprised when people talk about a military base. There's nothing like that. And that has been the focus. So when he responds to it in this manner, which means those who are saying military base, he wants to satisfy the non-Ghanaians who really, it is not all Ghanaians who really appreciate what we are discussing. I'll tell you why. You have some Ghanaians, when they hear the name United States, something triggers in their blood system and they go haywire. You have some Ghanaians, because it is the tradition I belong to, no matter what we do, they will fight it. You have some Ghanaians who really want to sit back and read and carefully listen to the matter. Sometimes they get confused. That's why you're asking me these questions. So we need to really dissect these matters and then focus on them. Hence, what the president did is to let those who really are getting confused realize the exact matter before them. That is why he said a certain volume, a certain quantity of Ghanaians put him in office. He must make sure he served them. And let me jump on a little matter so you get to the reason why the president used some words hypocrisy. You see, on 4th of January 2016, we had a communication from the Foreign Affairs Ministry of Ghana. And this was signed at the time by a deputy director. It says that, in paragraph 3 says that, it will be appreciated if the draft agreement could be considered and approved for onward transmission to the U.S. authorities. I'll tender that in evidence for you. Don't worry, let me just jump on. On the 15th of February, this was written from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the Ministry of Defense. It hurts me that I'm doing this, because these things are matters of security which is not supposed to come out. But in the space, in the exigencies, if some of these matters are not put out, it will not settle the dust. You go federal, you see that draft agreement between the United States of America and the Republic of Ghana Defense Corporation, 15th of February. And it says that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration has submitted a self-explanatory letter in reference A, together with blah, 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 blah. Okay, the second paragraph is what I need. I am to request that you take the necessary action and submit a feedback on the matter to the Honorable Minister for Defense for further action. These are matters which we have already agreed. The draft agreement, it was before us under the previous administration. It comes back. Draft agreement between the United States of America and the Republic of Ghana on defense cooperation. This is the same matter.
And this is the 4th of March.
This is the 4th of March.
2016.
2016. But you know, which year is 2016? 2016 is our year of battle, when we said the battle was for the Lord, and God brought us into office. So the government could not travel with the matter and left it. It's been there. It's been before them.
Okay.
So you've asked your officers to, he said, you see, I love the fourth, he says, well, it will be appreciated if the draft agreement could be considered and approved for onward transmission to the U.S. authorities. These are matters that at that level, we engage and flow. Okay. So when we know of this, and then we turn around to come and say that we have no knowledge. And you see, I'm not concerned to my colleagues I'm sitting on the table with. These are men of cabinet who understands what we mean by a cabinet communication. Okay. These things will never happen without a cabinet communication. And they come out and tell us that they know next to nothing.
All right. Oh. So we can get into the main subject matter as regards the documents that have been referred to profusely over the last 2 weeks on this subject of whether there will be a military base or there will not be a military base. And despite all the assurances, Inus Afuseni and James Agalga will make the point again to you on the basis of the documents that there is or will be a military base. The chairman of the Defense and Interior Committee and Kweku Bako will also demonstrate to you that these are interpretations that are the figment of the imaginations of these gentlemen and do not constitute part of the agreement. Question that is being asked: why was it not stated in the agreement specific that there will not be a military base? Should defense matters of this nature also be matters for public discussion? We'll get into that and show you why some disagree that we are getting to be too democratic and abuse the process. The president spoke about it. We'll be right back.